A very good morning to all of you. So, regarding today's discussion that is to take place at 11:30 a.m. regarding the artificial TMJ and the replacement of the temporomandibular joint, I have informed that there will be a recorded lecture as well. So, this, my friends, is the recorded lecture. Now, before I start off this lecture, I'd like to go over a brief anatomy of the temporomandibular joint. So, what exactly is the temporomandibular joint? I would put it forward in the best of terms that temporomandibular joint is the most important joint for the dental surgeon, because as far as dental surgery courses are concerned, the region that we deal with the most is the head and neck and orofacial region. So, a complete and in-depth knowledge of the anatomy and functioning of the temporomandibular joint is but essential and almost mandatory to success in dental surgery. I'll briefly go over the anatomy since this lecture doesn't have much to deal with the anatomical part. I have to move on to the replacement part. So, just as a part of the same, the temporomandibular joint is basically housed in the glenoid fossa, and it's basically also known as a glyngymo-arthrodial joint. The glyngymus movement is the rotational movement, and the arthrodial movement is the sliding movement. So, it's a movement that rotates as well as there's a slide. So, this joint is quite unique in that way. If you take a look at the condylar head right here, it is housed within the glenoid fossa, and interposed in between the glenoid fossa and the condyle is an articular disc. Now, a very important muscle in this region is the lateral pterygoid muscle. It gives fibers both to the neck of the condyle as well as the articular disc. So, whenever the mandible opens, the lateral pterygoid muscle helps to move the condyle and the articular disc in synchronity, so that none goes ahead of the other, or the articular disc does not slip over the head of the condyle. One of the most common pathologies is the dislocation of the articular disc. That is, whenever the patient will open the mouth, the articular disc will slide over the head of the condyle and move ahead of it instead of moving along with it. Why is it essential for this articular disc to move along with it? The articular disc is sort of a padded protection between the bony structures of the condyle and the glenoid fossa. So, it's very essential that the articular disc moves along with the condylar head. Now, housed within the temporomandibular joint capsule, that is all the TMJ capsule, the fibers that you see all around it, so is the entire complex of the temporomandibular joint. Within this complex, you have synovial fluid as well. The temporomandibular joint is basically a synovial joint, so there's constant lubrication being provided to the joint. And the articular disc does play a major role in providing constant lubrication. In fact, if I go further into the physiology of the temporomandibular joint, the lubrication is via the cartilage of the the cartilage of the condyle, and as well as through the articular disc. Now, what is exactly the temporomandibular ligament? So, the ligament is there are three ligaments right here. One is the temporomandibular joint capsule, which is again in itself a ligament. You have the lateral ligament, and then you have the temporomandibular ligament. The temporomandibular ligament consists of an outer oblique portion and an inner horizontal portion. What exactly are temporomandibular joint disorders? Now, again, this is not exactly a lecture on temporomandibular joint anatomy or temporomandibular joint disorders. This is basically a lecture on the replacement of the temporomandibular joint. So, I would like to classify the temporomandibular joint disorders into two types. This is how I would like to divide them: resolvable and end stage. Now, both of these can be solved through surgical intervention and prosthetic intervention. But when it comes to an end stage temporomandibular joint disease, for example, you have osteoarthritis of the temporomandibular joint, and you come to a certain stage where nothing else can be done except for resection of the joint itself. What do? You can have a surgical intervention. You say, yeah, we'll go ahead with a surgical intervention. That is the removal of the joint. But is there prosthetic replacement of the joint possible? Now most of you would end up with a question mark at this point, considering that prosthetic replacement of the joint is mostly not the way you prosthetically replace anything else. So if you look at an end stage, this can again be of two types. There may be an opportunity that is almost open for healing, so you can go in for a surgical intervention like something like arthroplasty, and then try to sort of improve the situation by going in for removal of the diseased area, minimal removal of the diseased area. But in case the entire joint has been affected to such a bad way that no kind of surgical intervention can help, you have to go in for a prosthetic replacement. Now it's even hard to imagine how prosthetic replacement of this joint would be possible, because considering that the joint in itself is such a complex structure. Before that, what are the types of surgeries you have? You have arthroplasty and condylectomy, that is complete removal of the condyle. It is in case of a condylectomy that we go in for a joint replacement. Now, condylectomy may be absolutely partial or complete. In case of partial condylectomy, once you performed it, you basically have to reposition the disc. That's about it. Nothing more has to be done after arthroplasty. A bit of disc repositioning is done, and disc repositioning again may require a prosthetic part, that is the use of splints. Prosthetic TMJ splints may be required in disc positioning. Now, in case of complete, there is absolute loss of the condyle. Alright, there is absolute loss of the condyle in case of complete condylectomy. Now, previously they had tried to use protoplast and celastic materials for treatment, which lead to serious failure because of giant cell foreign body reaction. Now, in protoplast and celastic materials, there is a serious failure because of giant cell foreign body reaction, because of which what exactly happens is that the prosthetic replacement for the joint itself gets attacked, and you will have a bigger pathology than the one that was previously present because of this type of an immune reaction. Came out with the TMJ TJR device, that is the titanium, in which has a titanium mandibular condyle and a polyurethane mandibular implant fossa. So what is a TMJ TJR device? A TMJ TJR device is a temporomandibular joint total joint replacement device. So this is something that completely replaces the whole joint. Now Yoda et al. In 2020 published an article in which they stated that they've tried to use the Biomed total joint replacement system. So I would like to explain this replacement system a bit further, that the Biomed total joint replacement system was basically approved by the FDA in 1995 for clinical trials, and it was completely approved as a clinical device in the year 2005. So that's 10 long years which it took before it was finally approved. Now what are the components? You have a mandibular implant that is to be placed in the mandible, and then you have a fossa implant, that is the ARCOM ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. Now ARCOM is again a registered trademark, and the mandibular implant is basically made up of you have two parts of it. One is the basic structure and the other is the metal it has been sprayed with. So it's basically a titanium, aluminium, vanadium alloy sprayed with a cobalt chromium molybdenum layer. Now coming to the types of screw diameters. Now before I explain these screw diameters to you, I'm just enumerating them right now, and I shall be explaining them in further detail much later. So screw diameter is 2.7 mm and 3.2 mm, alright, for the mandibular implant. And the screw length, that is the depth to which the screw will go, can range anywhere from 6 to 18 mm, and the depth to where the mandibular emergency screw. So you have the normal screw, then you have the emergency screws. The emergency screws range from 8 to 16 mm. That's the depth to which they will go into the bone, or the height of the screw. Alright. Coming to talk about what is replacing what. So as you can see, they have replaced the glenoid fossa with an ultra high molecular weight polyethylene structure, and they have replaced the joint and a part of the ramus with the titanium, aluminium, vanadium alloy, and which has been sprayed with the cobalt chromium molybdenum. So the total joint replacement guidelines is a very good document by Dr. Peter D. Quinn, who's a DMD and an MD, and the contributors are Dr. Franklin Dolwick and Douglas P. Sin, and Dr. Peter Quinn is basically the professor and chair in the Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery in the University of Pennsylvania. So according to him, the following steps have to be taken in order to replace the joint. First things first you expose the ramus, followed by exposure of the zygomatic arch, followed by exposure of the entire joint. Then you have a PDQ retractor now, that is a special type of retractor which is used for temporomandibular joint surgeries. You have PDQ retractor to prepare for osteotomy. Then that's what I've understood. Then you dissect medial to the condylar neck, followed by ramal exposure, and then there's dissection along the mandibular branch of the facial nerve. There's masseteric reflection. There's again a secondary exposure of the ramus, and they begin an osteotomy with an 1 mm fissure burr, basically to mark the sites. Then there's a T-bar osteotome to finish the osteotomy. Then the second phase of the osteotomy is carried out as a 2-step osteotomy. Reciprocatum rasp is used to flatten the fossa eminence, and sizing and implantation of the fossa component is then done. There is intermaxillary fixation and fitting and placement of the mandibular component, and after that the final screw is placed. Now, along with the Biomet, along with the the Biomet appliance, another appliance had come up which is more custom as compared to the Biomet appliance, which has more of a I don't know if they've come up with CAD cam in it as of now, but the TMJ Concepts device basically uses the which is converted into a stereolithographic model, and it is on this model that finally the artificial TMJ is designed. Zheng et al. Have also published an article in which they've clearly mentioned that most of these TM joint replacement devices, one TM joint replacement device can go as high as $20,000 US. So it's one of the most expensive surgeries that one can get done, as mentioned in literature. So CAD cam, Zheng et al. Have also mentioned that CAD cam designed prosthesis can be made at a much cheaper cost. They did the same thing in China, and the surgery ends by placing the free graft of the buccal pad of fat into the space around the prosthetic neck. Why have they placed this graft around the prosthetic neck? Basically because in any kind of artificial joint, one of the big drawbacks would be that the synovial fluid lubrication part is missing. So how do you overcome that? You overcome that by using the buccal pad of fat. Now, multiple complications can rise. Now, Yodo et al. Have also mentioned in the article that multiple complications can rise, like intraoperative hemorrhage. So, basically, you have to check the blood vessels are close to the operating field, or you have to opt for something which is safe, like piezosurgery. Occlusal abnormality and dislocation of the artificial head, basically reduction and intermaxillary fixation have to be done in order as a remedy to the occlusal abnormality and the dislocation. Infection of the artificial head. Now, in case of infection, like any other, antibiotics have to be taken. You have to make sure that there is no biofilm formation, and worst of the worst cases, you may actually have to go in for removal of the prosthesis. Now consider this. This is exactly how the TMJ replacement device looks like, and this is the presentation of Dr. Peter Quinn. And Dr. Peter Quinn is the Vice Dean for Professional Services at the School of Dental Medicine, and he's also the Schoenberg Professor of the Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, School of Dental Medicine. And contributors to the surgical guideline are Dr. Franklin Dolwick and Dr. Douglas P. Sin. So you have them from the University of Gainesville and from the University of Texas. as he has shown it right here, there's the first part is the exposure of the ramus. Alright. This is then followed by exposure of the zygomatic arch. First the ramus and the second the zygomatic arch. Then exposure of the entire joint. Now, with the combination of condylar retractors and specifically designed condylar neck retractors, the condyle is isolated in preparation for a two-step osteotomy. This is followed by a dissection medial to the condylar neck. Now, medial to the condylar neck, you perform another dissection. Followed again by ramal exposure. Then you dissect along the mandibular branch of the facial nerve. This is followed by the reflection of the masseter. Again followed by ramal exposure. Then you begin the osteotomy with the 1.0 mm fissure burr. A T-bar osteotome is used to then finish the osteotomy. Then he also mentions a two-step osteotomy, in which specially designed holding forceps are used to maintain a secure purchase point up to the inferior border of the mandible. The ramus is then pushed superiorly up to the space created by step 1 of the two-step osteotomy. Push the ramus up. Now this allows better visualization. Then the reciprocating rasp is used to flatten the fossa eminence. And sizing and implantation of the fossa component is done. He is also mentioned here that tipping the fossa anteriorly at the excessive angle could potentially lead to displacement of the condylar prosthesis during function. It is recommended to place the fossa prosthesis with 2 screws initially to make sure that the mating between the fossa prosthesis and the condylar prosthesis is optimal before placing the recommended 4 screws. Alright. This is followed by intermaxillary fixation. And then you have the final screw placement. Condylar prosthesis is placed with 2.7 mm screws, and again the surgical incision are covered. So once you exactly drawn the match, you finish the surgery with the condylar prosthesis screws. So you start with the condylar prosthesis screws. Let's get back to the same. So you have the reciprocating rasp, and so they say that the fossa prosthesis should initially be placed with 2 screws. Alright, that's what they mentioned. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, they placed 4 screws, they left the other 3 on, and intermaxillary fixation has to be done, and it's only after that that the final screw placement takes place. Alright, so basically once the condylar prosthesis is secured, you remove the intermaxillary fixation wire to make sure there is acceptable range of motion of the prosthesis. So the intermaxillary fixation is again only an intermittent step of the same thing. So the intermaxillary fixation is basically done to position them, and why is it removed? It's basically removed to check the functionality of the joint before you place the final screws on the on the Ramal condylar component. So you have fossa component and then you have a Ramal condylar component. The lower one is the Ramal condylar component, and the part that is placed on the zygomatic arch is your fossa component. This is with regards to the references. So I have referred to articles by Ackland et al., Zeng et al., Westmark et al. In order to make this presentation, and I'll be joining you in for a live discussion at 11:30 am, in which I shall make a short presentation once again, and then I'll be joined in by Metastat, that is the handle of Dr. Suryodaya Singh, and he'll also come in and discuss the pros, cons, and what one can say, the indications and the contraindications of using this prosthesis. That's it for the pre-recorded video. Thank you.